what's the difference between the IB and traditional school approaches? Lots of people around the world they always ask know how to respond to it, and they don't understand it, and it's so confusing. A lot of the time we just give up. So what we're going to present to you today is a really simple way to understand the differences between the IB approach and the traditional school approach. So we're going to start out first with Miss Elaine sharing with us a little bit about how do we think about the IB? And this is going to be done in a way that you can really take home and understand easily. Just 3 points. And then we're going to move to sharing by two of our parents, Dr. Bala and Miss Wendy, about their actual experiences as a parent. So you can have a look in. Now, so during this whole time period, just pump the messages into the chat and I'll pick it up as it goes along. I might not be able to get to everybody, but we'll try our best, okay? So, Elaine, you now.
All right, thank you, Dr. Vincent. Thank you, Ms. Chan. Welcome, everyone. I'm Elaine. As Ms. Chan introduced earlier on, I am the Prime Year's program. Right, so let's get started. Next slide. Right, so what's the problem now in our current education system? So here we actually identified there are two kinds of problem. The first is that our children are being prepared for artificial proxies of success through an outdated system designed in the industrial era. There is too much focus in knowledge retention. So there is a lot of emphasis on money making over being educated. There's also too much emphasis on what we learn. This actually leads us to the second problem, which is we assess everyone on the same scale to see who is better than who. So there's a lot of pressure to produce high scores, which has resulted in a teach to the test, which means that I teach you so that you can score well in your tests, in which other non-tested subjects such as the arts, the music, the physical education, they have been given short shrift to actually devote more time to test preparation. So you see, there's too much emphasis on the meaning of standardized, clear or complete picture of overall student learning. Okay, so this leads us to a question. So then how does IB fit in this picture against the traditional school approach? Well, so what is the IB? Okay, so IB started off in 1968. It is not based in any one country. It is not a country system where we say this American curriculum is a British, so on and so forth. It's actually a system of best practices. It is a really truly international sort of framework that the IB has taken together all practices and presented themselves as a framework for everyone. To this date, under the IB system itself, we have 1 million over students. We are present in 100 over countries. All right. Under the IB itself, we are practiced widely across the world. In the IB, it also goes across the age ranges. So we have the IB Primary Years program. It's starting from the age of 3 to 12 years old. And then we have the referred to as secondary school here. All right, so that actually the age range falls between 11 to 16. And then after their complete program, they can either go to the diploma program, which leads them to tertiary education. And also there's another pathway, what we call career program, which leads them to vocational schools. All right, so before I move on to actually talking about the 3 main points, what the IB, we kind of touch briefly on how does the programs all differ from each other. They actually use different types of discipline in terms of the methods and pedagogy. So in the primary, what it means is that we learn through a unit of inquiry, we learn through a provocation. All right, so we don't learn subjects as it is, as a single discipline itself. Then this leads us to the middle years program, where it is interdisciplinary. All right, it's kind of like a stew, kind of like a soup. All right, so in the soup itself, you can kind of see, oh, I can kind of see that the ingredients are sort of distinguishable, but overall there is a blend of different flavors inside. So this interdisciplinary approach, we can learn 2 subjects together at the same time, 2 to 3 subjects together. But in the primary years, we learn all of the subjects together in what we call integration. And this leads us to also the diploma program and also the career program. It is very disciplinary. It is like a single ingredient, all right? It's clearly distinguishable. So if you're learning about biology, you learn all of the components of biology. Or if you're learning about information technology, you learn every component about information technology there. All right, so I'm just touching very basic information regarding the programs. All right, so we've actually summed up this presentation in 3 points. So what is the IB? Is actually a system of best practices, internationally recognized, and then we are also preparing learners for life and not another exam. So, all right, next slide. So why do we say it's a system of best practices? So education has actually progressed a lot over the years. So what the IB has done is they have sewn all of the best practices together. So there are a lot of pedagogy in the world right now. If you see, there are words such as inquiries, assessment tools, strategies, visible thinking, visible learning. You know, we have all these words like Bloom's taxonomy, things like that. But I think if it's the essence of IB itself is really looking at inquiry-based and international mindedness. In fact, this is their mission statement and vision statement too. Right, next slide. Right, so here's a picture, all right? Just let's see this picture for a while, have a little think and wonder about it, all right? So in every IB lesson, we start off with a see, think and wonder. This is what we call a provocation. There's a lot of things and elements in this picture that's happening. So we start off asking our students, what do you see in this picture? What do you think happened to this whale? Why do you think it happened? You know, what are all of those materials that are inside the whale's mouth? Why is he washed ashore? So all of these questions, they're provocation questions. It makes the students wonder. It will provoke them to be curious, which leads me to the next slide, which is why it's inquiry. What is inquiry-based learning then? Right? So why we start off with provocations. Provocations, they're intended to provoke, you know, to provoke you, to really make you think and wonder why. So it's a question, a wonder, a thought, a feeling of curiosity. So any signs of this engagement, they are really what provocation seeks, all right? So inquiry-based learning is really a learning and teaching approach that emphasizes itself on students' question. It is very different from interrogation, right? So if I'm teaching maths, I go say, hey, you did, what's the answer to this? What's the answer to that? It's about pressure, anxiety to the student, you know, if they're unable to actually answer you on the spot. They may have been daydreaming in the class because, you know, there's just too much knowledge, information related to them, they couldn't answer at the spot. But inquiry sounds a lot more like what I've just asked you. So why do you think this happened? What do you think happened to the whale? Maybe wonder, you know, how did the whale wash ashore? So it really makes you wonder and be curious about what actually happened to that particular whale in the picture, right? And just this particular picture, and we have done many times in our classroom, especially in the primary years, where they are learning about sharing the planet and they are learning about rights and responsibility in the world to share resources with people and living things. It actually touches upon recycling, it touches upon the water cycle actually, and it touches upon what kind of actions can we lead, what kind of environmental actions can the students do to help make the world a better place. Okay, so and that's about inquiry. So next one I would like to talk about is also which leads to international mindedness, right? So it makes them wonder. So from those pictures, and from the picture earlier on, they're like wondering, oh, how can I make a world a better place to, you know, so that all of us can live in peace? Although it may sound very cliche, but this is one of the main beliefs that we have today, you know. How can we make our students, our child more internationally minded? It's not just being open-minded in taking action sort of sense, but it's really accepting all other cultures and beliefs. They take action through discussion and they collab to really help build a better and peaceful world. So earlier on, like when I talk about that whale, so the students actually have done a project where they build up campaigns to bring upon awareness about pollution in the rivers, overfishing, how can we recycle plastics, and so on and so forth. So they really want to take an action on this particular campaign to make the world a better place and for other living things to live in. Right, next slide. So that is really looking at,
so Ms. Elaine, just a little question here. Sorry to break your line of thought, but inquiry and international mindedness, how do we see this in traditional schools then? How is this different from traditional schools?
Right, that's a very good question. So I think a lot of earlier on I spoke about, there's a lot of knowledge retention in our current approach in schools that we use. We don't see students having the opportunity to ask this sort of questions. We don't see these provocations happening in class. When we start off a traditional approach, it's very much, I think in most of our experiences, very much on, all right, we're going to cover this today. We're going to cover ABC, but we don't really know why we're covering it and how it can lead us to taking better action, on the earth itself.
Okay.
Right.
And how about international mindedness in traditional education? I mean, does that work? Does that happen?
Right. I think when we talk about international mindedness, a lot of us, first thing that we'll jump into, especially in the traditional approach, is that we will look at, we have to accept other beliefs only. So it touches on cultural beliefs very much in the traditional approach, where though we celebrate another person's diversity, is not really just talking about in that aspect of international mindedness. It's really looking at the common humanity. It's not just about accepting each other's beliefs through their cultures, but also accepting their way of thinking, accepting their thoughts, their perspective. It's not really just looking at culture. I think a lot of emphasis that we have in the current traditional approach is where we just look at culture and say, oh yeah, this is a different race, so you have to accept the culture. But no, it's not just culture. It's really also perspective about their thoughts, what they believe in. It's not really just culture of, because I am Chinese, I celebrate Chinese New Year. Okay, I will celebrate Deepavali because I accept your culture. It's not really on that surface level, but in the IB, they really go down to a deeper level on understanding different perspectives. It could be about politics, it could be about religion, it could be about race. So it's so much more than just looking at cultures.
Thanks a lot for that, for drawing the difference between the IB and the traditional education.
Right. Okay. So so this leads us to, so we have actually covered the point about system of best practices. So this leads us to being internationally recognized. So I know a lot of concerns have actually been raised by parents. So is IB internationally recognized, especially in its, I would say, infancy stage in our current country? Yes, universities love the IB. In fact, the IB itself really prepares you for university. From a first-hand experience, I would say that, I think when I graduated from secondary school, I went through the IGCSE curriculum. So there's no fault in that. We learn because we make do with what we have. So there's a pathway that we take. So when you finish secondary 5, you go, hey, I'm not sure what I want to do now. At the age of 17 years old, it could be 16 years old, you really don't know what you want to do, right? So when I went into the IB, taking a plunge, because I did not want to do A-levels, not to say that there's nothing wrong with A-levels. A-levels is still highly recognized across the world. But when I went into the IB, what I realized is that it has prepared me so much for university that university felt like a breeze for me. Things that you learn in the IB, you learn about referencing, you learn critical thinking, you learn independent learning. All of this, I don't think it's very much visible when you go into the other sort of approaches. But in the IB itself, they put so much emphasis in critical thinking that someone from a mainstream school really like myself, really struggled in understanding what is critical thinking. How do I go deeper into, to the, like if you look at Bloom's taxonomy, how do I go to, how do I analyze, how do I evaluate in the highest order? So universities love the IB. So if you can see here, there are a couple of reviews from the different types of universities. In fact, I had friends when we graduated IB, they went into UCL, they went into Imperial, they went into Harvard, MIT, right? So it is a very internationally recognized system. So if that is one of the key concerns that you have, right? So next slide, the HESA report, which is the higher education statistics, actually prefer, for the other sort of qualifications. So IB students are more likely to get into a top 20 university. They're also likely to do better at university, which like I can advocate for in particular instance. But yes, you have to work really hard, but it's very unknown, but it really sets for life in terms of that, right? There is also what you call, if you look at the statistics, there's a link there. I think we probably, Ms. Chan or Dr. Vincent can share in the chat. You can go there and kind of like, what are the university enrollment and outcomes? You can see that the IB itself, the DP students, what we call it, they are likely to go for further study postgraduate. They are likely to go for their masters. They are also likely to achieve at least a second-class honors degree, also a first-class honors degree. They will, in some circumstances, there are certain modules if you have completed your DP and you know what you want to do, that you can waive off some of the subjects that you don't have to do in the university. So sorry, my internet is a little bit unstable. So I'm sure most of you don't know that, but there are some credits that you need not take when you go into the university if you have completed the IB, because what we have covered is actually a very high level. So there are certain modules that you need not do, and you can straight away go into other modules.
You can skip an entire year sometimes, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, but it depends again what course you're doing.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, if that's a 1 year of university fees, that's what, 80,000, 90,000 ringgit,
right?
saved
Okay.
right there.
So this is third point. So here we are, the IB itself, the vision and mission statement is always, if you take the time to read their website, they will always mention this liveness. So here we are preparing learners for success. Right? We are preparing students for lifelong learning. We are preparing them for critical thinking and independent inquiry. So how do we do that? What you will notice is that we are preparing the learners for success in life, not another exam. So we're not a teach to test framework. So the assessments that are designed here in the IB, we do not use any percentile. What we use here is rubrics. So I think rubrics is not a very common method of assessing, especially in a traditional approach. Though there are some transitions towards it, but in the IB itself, the main focus is using rubrics. Why rubrics though? Because it actually shows you what level you're at, your understanding, where it is at. It goes down from being a very limited understanding all the way to excellent understanding, rather than measuring the percentage of answers that you got right in the test. So that's the main, I would say the main difference when you look at the school system and also the IB approach. So the assessments that we design in school are very relevant and meaningful. And it's assessment where the students get to choose. What does that mean? All right, we can be learning the same thing, but the output that we want to translate our learning in, it's very different. Okay, so for example, here I will just show you rubrics. Here we actually look at a criterion A and from the MYP. So in MYP, they've broken down their criteria into 4 different types of rubrics. All right, so but the focus here we're looking is really at knowing and understanding. So for example, you can see in the rubrics, there's an achievement 0. So the student does not reach a standard described by any of the descriptors below, which means that perhaps this could be an event of non-submission, all right? But it could be just the students totally do not fit the descriptors at all. But let's say the students are doing a science experiments, they need to recall certain scientific knowledge. So if you look at the rubrics very carefully, there is a distinguished, I would say value distinguished criteria that brings you from a 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, 5 to 6, 7 to 8 being the highest. So for example, like 1 to 2, I can only recall. Okay, I can suggest solutions to the problems in familiar situations because these are things that I know. And I can apply this certain information to make judgments. But how do I then get from a 1 to 2? Because my understanding here is very shallow. So how do I move from a 1 to 2 to a 3 to 4? So instead of just recalling at a 3 to 4 rubrics level, how do I improve that? I need to be able to state. So there are very specific criteria you can see. So 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. So in 3 to 4, I need to state what is the scientific knowledge that I know. I need to be able to apply my knowledge and understanding to solve the problem, right? And then I also need to apply the information to make scientifically supported judgments, not just any judgments. So you can see that in the criterion here, it's very specific for me to move from like a 1 to 2 limited understanding to a 3 to 4 to a substantial understanding in that sense. All right. Okay, so this is really, if you look at our rubrics and the way we assess in the IB, it's very much different from the teach to test format in the traditional school. Right, I think that covers my 3 points. I also would like to actually kind of share the IB myths and that people actually have. All right, so a lot of people say the IB is extremely difficult. This is very subjective and perspective. Okay, so because the way it's designed for us to prepare for life. Life is difficult, isn't it? I'm sure of you can agree with me. Life itself is a challenge every day. I mean, for some, it's like waking up is a challenge. It's like getting ready for work is a challenge at some days. And if you're a mother of like a newborn baby like myself, that's a true challenge, you know, because you face sleepless nights. Yeah. So, but the IB itself, since you're preparing the learners for life, it's not a shortcut to just pass an exam. They either face life, the challenges, the difficulties of life early or late when they actually get fired by a boss because there are so many things that they don't know how to do. You know, just sharing another example, I think a lot of my friends, their companies, they hire interns. So these interns, they are fairly, they're new graduates, university graduates, but because they have not really been out of their shell before, don't really know how to use critical thinking, don't know how to think on their feet. Eventually, they are also phased out because they are unable to really understand the challenges of life, right? Second myth is that the IB is not for common people because IB schools are expensive. All right, this is totally not true. All right, while the most expensive international schools without the IB program can cost up to 10K a month. Fairview, actually, we make it very affordable for everyone to go through from PYP all the way to DP. I think when I myself did the DP, it was considered an expensive program then because most places didn't offer the PYP and MYP. But having PYP, the continuum PYP all the way to DPA, especially at our price, is actually very affordable, right? Third myth, I think earlier on I already addressed this, it's not accepted by universities worldwide. That's not true. The equivalence is very different, all right? In fact, even if you just score the bare minimum of like 28 out of 45 points, you can get into any universities worldwide. Any universities, trust me, all right? Because I have been through, I mean, I wouldn't say that my scores were low, but I had friends who did not even pass the diploma program. That in fact, if you don't get 28 out of 45, you don't get a diploma, you get a certificate only. And they still went to university. So this is definitely not true. So this myth is busted. All right. And the fourth myth is that the assessment process of IB is different and big. So here, earlier on, I talked about the rubrics and how the outcomes shared by students can be different. All right, so the IB assessments here, they actually challenge the student to use their mind, not just, again, not teach to test format. It's not me memorizing to you know, kind of like translate what I memorized onto a paper. So the IB consistently assesses instead of using exams, and they make the assessments very, very meaningful and relevant. So just like any good IB student, IB teacher, all right, we have to consolidate what I have talked about in the last, not too sure how many minutes I've been talking, but yeah, so to consolidate what I've talked about, all right, so what is really the IB? It is a system of best practices. It is internationally recognized. And the third point that for you to remember is they're really preparing learners for life and not another exam. And with that, that concludes my part. Back to
Thank
you,
you very
Dr.
much,
Vincent.
Elaine. We do have one question that came out. Matthew Lee.
Yes.
Matthew, do you want to ask your question directly? Just unmute and share your question for us, please, Matthew.
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, I'd like to know, just now you mentioned about the, well recognized by all the university, right? How about the Singapore and China University? Do they really recognize IB?
Do you want me to do this one for you, Elaine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Singapore is very easy. The top schools in Singapore are IB schools, like Anglo-Chinese International. And yes, if you go to the NUS website, on all of the websites in the Singaporean universities, in the admissions page, they will directly give you the IB diploma requirement. So it's very, very recognized over there. Now in China, it's a little bit tricky because they still mandate the Gaokao. So you still need to do the Gaokao before going into the university. So you have to have the diploma and the Gaokao to go in. Now that's probably one of the rare areas that's going to give students a little bit of challenge because everywhere else, IB diploma students are just received in Europe, UK, US, Australia, Canada, yeah, pretty much everywhere. All right, Matthew, I hope that helps you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Okay, so thank you very much for that, Elaine. And we're going to move forward. To please again put your questions into the chat group, and we'll try and get to them as much as we can. But in the interest of time, I'm going to move forward to one of our parents sharing. And let's welcome Wendy Wong. If you don't mind sharing with us your experience as a parent in Kuala Lumpur campus.
Hello, everybody. I'm Wendy, and my son is Caden. He's currently in primary 3 right now, and he's been in Fairview since he was in primary 1. So a little bit about my son. Caden, we were actually living in Hong Kong for the past 4 years, and we recently just moved back like last year. So for Caden, he started his education in Hong Kong. And back in Hong Kong, I actually placed him in an international school as well, but it's just a regular international program where they follow the British curriculum. So Caden is a very, I would say Caden is a very curious child. Like he constantly wants to learn, he constantly wants to know a lot of things and whatnot, which is really great for me because, I don't have to put in so much effort in like teaching him like numbers or alphabets. He learned it by himself, like literally. So like, yeah, anyway. When he started schooling in Hong Kong is a very competitive place when it comes to their education. So it's like, yeah, when he first started learning in Hong Kong, it was okay and everything. And then as he went to K2, right, kindergarten 2, there was just one day that the teacher approached me and they told me that, Caden, sometimes there are times where Caden struggles in school because for Caden, though he is very curious, as much as I'm sorry about that. He struggles in his speech. Can you guys hear me?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, he struggles in his speech. So there are times where like I will feel that his speech is not on par compared to his peers, but he's always trying, you see. So anyway, the K2 teacher told me that he needs to repeat another year in K2 just because he's not on par with his peers, which was very devastating for me, I mean, to me, to hear from a teacher when my son is only in kindergarten telling me that he has to repeat, like, what is going on? So it triggered me. I was really, really sad. I couldn't accept the fact as well, but I overcame it. I embraced it. I got him diagnosed with a proper therapist and with a proper therapist and whatnot. And true enough, sadly to say, he was diagnosed with severe language and speech delay, which means that he knows a lot of stuff, but there are just not enough words and vocabulary in him to tell you what it is. So with that, because of that, sometimes it can perceive as him that he is lack of understanding things, So yeah. So anyway, I embraced it, which means I made him repeat another year again, which is really sad. And with that, I topped it up with 1 year of intensive speech therapy where I brought him to a speech therapist. I did speech therapy. And then when he did his assessment after 1 year, he is no longer severe, and he actually picked up a lot, which is I'm really grateful for. So yeah, back then, and fast forward, then we moved back to KL, and that's when I exposed him to IB. I knew IB from my siblings. My brother and sisters are both IB graduate, but unfortunately, I'm an IGCSE product. So I am always very intrigued with this inquiry-based learning. Like, what is it about? That kind of thing. And for me, like when I wanted for him to join the IB curriculum, my only, as shallow as it is, my only concern was just, and my only thing that I want from him is just to be able to talk, from a mother who has a child that has severe language and speech delay. All I want for him is just to talk, is just to express his feelings, sometimes it's like, when he had the speech delay, it's sometimes I don't get any dynamic relationship with him, where like, when I pick him up from school back in Hong Kong, I'll be like, hey, Kaden, how was your day? What did you eat in school today? I didn't think it was a problem, but back then he would just look at me and he would smile at me. But yeah, as he did, like, he wouldn't answer anything. But for me, persistence, I was really persistent. So every day I asked him the same thing, and I paired it up with like speech therapy. And there was just one day he said, oh, I had biscuits. And I'm like, oh, okay, you can talk, that kind of thing. So yeah. So anyway, when he came back, that's when he started the IB curriculum. All I wanted was him to talk. So I chose the IB path for Kaden because I feel like it was the most suitable curriculum for him to be able to speak his mind, to be able to share his experience, because I know there's so much in him. There are so many times that he wants to explain things to you, he wants to tell you something, but there's just not enough vocabulary, not enough depth to it. But yeah, so I feel like this would actually get him to learn about the world from a different point of view. And yeah, the learning process has been really pleasant. And yeah, next slide. So yeah, the skills that he developed throughout this whole entire journey is, okay, for Kaden, right? Unfortunately, I only enrolled Kaden in the Fairview during the pandemic. So he only went to school for, I think, like a month before MCO started, where he has to do online learning and whatnot. But what all this has taught me it's only taught me one important thing is children are very resilient, they are able to adapt to things that that is not comfortable for them. For us, we are not comfortable. We go through I know like the pandemic has hit us so badly and everything, but I feel like every time when I'm going down, like when I'm feeling sad and I'm crashing, but when I look at him and I look at my other son, my children, I feel like, okay, they're really resilient. They adapt to whatever circumstances that you put towards them, and they embrace it wholeheartedly, which I'm so humbled by, and I take it as a motivation for me to be a better parent for them. So yeah, so Kaden has proved to me that online, that you are able to learn regardless of where you are and wherever you are and whenever it is, because throughout this pandemic, like last year, I actually flew my children to Hong Kong with my husband to see my husband, and he was doing his online learning there as well. He was doing his primary one with Fairview the entire journey, and it didn't affect him at all. So yeah, so as long as there's a discipline in the child and the teachers that never give up on them, I feel like it really plays a big part on Kaden's development. So yeah, with IB, I feel like he has a lot of critical thinking skills. For now, like he's in primary 3 right now, I can see that he's always like, he wants to participate. He wants to tell everybody whatever he learns so bad. He has this like need to tell, that kind of thing. Like you just have to know. And his presentation skills are really, I would say that he has progressed a lot. And I feel like sometimes I'm so surprised that, wow, a primary child can do presentation. I've never did presentation until I was like in university, So yeah, next slide. And the mindsets and the values that are cultivated for him is, I feel that they are constantly curious. So it's like, so Kaden, sometimes he's a little bit irrelevant, but at the same time, he's constantly curious, he's constantly enthusiastic, and he's independent. Independent in a sense where like, I don't tell him what to do, he logs into his class, he wakes up in the morning, he brushes his teeth, he showers, he logs into the class, and he is just in class, you know, he's constantly participating. He wants to be, he doesn't want to be late at all. So yeah, so I feel like he's independent, and yeah, the creativity comes in as well. So I see that, you know, for me, I see that Caden has vocabulary, is constantly curious. And I feel like, yeah, I'm just like super humbled by it. Like, you know, I feel like this is a breakthrough for him, you know, because I don't know whether I can get the same product if I were to choose the different path for him. So yeah, next slide. Yeah, so yeah, I feel like this application to real life skills, this critical thinking on how he drills every topic that he learns and whatnot, I feel like it is very necessary for him, because I feel like he enjoys learning through discussion, inquiry based, you know. He enjoys being curious, he enjoys researching on it, he enjoys sharing his knowledge that he has learned from it. And yeah, it's something that, you know, I've never, because I am traditionally brought up, you know, with the whole British curriculum, IGCSE. So it's like, for me to see curious, for me to see him not being, not, you know, he doesn't feel like he's intimidated when it comes to, like, you know, presentation and whatnot. It's something that I'm very happy about, like, you know. He's not shy, he enjoys learning, he loves it, he loves going to school, though it's online. Yeah, he just enjoys it. And yeah, yeah, that's it from me.
Thanks a lot, Elaine. I have two questions coming through to you.
Yeah.
The first one, what you mentioned independence in your child, and you describe how he just goes to school by himself and sits through class by himself.
Yeah.
And I think this would be, frankly, the blessing of every parent out there during the pandemic. I know countless fathers and mothers who said that I have a second job, and that's to sit beside my son and teach him and make sure that he actually stays in class. What aspect of his educational experience do you believe developed this in him? Because you mentioned that this developed in him in the IB. So what aspect do you think created this in Caden?
As cliche as it sounds, I would say that the IB learner profile attributes really helped him a lot to shape who he is today. I feel like every time, like, having him to reflect on each of the lessons that he learned at every class, like, has taught him it's something that is very new to me as well, because in the beginning when he just started, like, you know, IB, then I'm thinking to myself, what do you reflect about this class? I don't know what to say, you know, the class just ends, that's it. 1 + 1 = 2. What else do you want to say? That kind of thing. But for him, like, yeah, he actually understood the whole concept. And for him to actually to learn about these attributes helped him so much, in a sense where, like, say if he's in a class and if he answers a question and the teacher says, like, oh, okay, then, you know, thanks for being courageous, I feel like he has the need to be more courageous. So he wants to learn more. He wants to listen. Yeah, he wants to listen in so much more, just so he can get another attribute, you know, to be rewarded by this attribute, you know, that kind of thing. So his constant crave to learn to me is like, okay, it's very wholesome, I would say. And there's not much effort needed from my end, because he learns everything based from inquiring and learning from his classmates and his teachers, just going back and forth. And I feel like from there, he is able to grasp onto something that is more, what you call that, more detailed, you know. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I got one more question for you. This came from another parent. You mentioned critical thinking. Can you share what you mean by critical thinking in your son's experience at home? What does this mean, this critical thinking? Because and I understand the reason for this question, because it's one of those words that we hear thrown around in popular culture so much, but very few of us understand what it means. So could you share your understanding of, you know, what is critical thinking in your son and how was it developed?
Okay, so I have no idea as well until he actually practiced it. That really, like, gave me another, you know, how I perceive him. So there was this one time I brought him to the park and he fell down. So he came crying, you know, and I always, you know, the Asian in me would be like, fall down, go run, go scoot some more, scoot faster, you know, that kind of thing. But then I told myself, okay, don't say anything. So I asked him, hey, how are you feeling? He's like, oh, mommy, I'm in pain. I'm in so much pain. I'm like, okay, what happened? So like, he's like, oh, okay, so right, mommy, the problem is, I know you told me not to go really fast, but I went anyway. So, I went anyway. And then I'm like, okay. And then I said, then how do you approach it? So I said, I went anyway and I fell down and got hurt really bad. So I said, what do you understand? Then I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. He said, but what I understood from it is I should be more careful next time and I shouldn't go so fast. Then I'm like, okay, you actually applied the whole, this like, ATL skills learning, the whole approach to this. It's like, wow, you actually like dissected this action where you just fell off the scooter into something that is more complex, and you actually break it down to pieces that you understand the problem, how you're gonna solve this problem, and what should he do to avoid this problem next time. And I'm like, okay,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. I see exactly what you're saying. I think a lot of parents would be very happy to have their kids be able to do the same thing. And we do see a lot of that. That what you described, breaking down a problem into its constituent parts, is what we term in the IB as analyze. And I know Miss Elaine teaches her kids exactly what analyze means in her classrooms. So I can understand exactly how that works. That sounds fantastic. It's a great story from yourself, Wendy, sharing about your child and his growth. And it's very inspiring for all of us. And I hope a lot of parents really took away a lot from that. Thank you so much for your sharing, Wendy.
No worries.
Okay, we're going to move forward now. We have another parent who's going to share with us, Dr. Bala. And your child is in our Penang campus, Dr. Bala, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Please, could you share with us his journey?
Thank you, Dr. Vincent. A very good morning to all the parents. A little background about my son, Roshan. He's now in M4, middle year program. And actually, he was a very timid child until, when he was young, quite quiet. And we were alerted by our pediatrician, and when he was 3 years old, as his vocab was not as same as his peers, actually. We were worried, and we do as other, same like what Wendy was telling. We took him to some pediatricians, some specialists, some speech therapies, and so on, just to rule out that he doesn't have any learning deficiencies. But then it was all ruled out. So the only thing that they advise us is to put him into an environment where learning can accelerate. So I did put him into a Montessori as a primary, and I'm from the traditional, I'm from the national system. My children, we are educators. I'm an educator. So I've already decided to put him into a national school. But I wanted to give him a try until he was 6 years old. There was some improvement when I put him under Montessori, but looks like I need to make a decision where I need to put him into a very small school, a very small classroom, because any class size which is below 15 will have a much effect on a child. That's what I believe in. So I have to put him into a private school, which the class size is around 20. Then I was planning to move him back to a national system when he was in year 4. But what happened was there was a change of policy, and then the school assessment, they've come to a school-based assessment and the DLP program, the PPSMI program, and so on. And he has to learn in both languages. And he has always this issue with language acquisition. And I believe in education should be for the need of a child, not for the need of the parent or need of the nation. It's more for the need of the child. So when he was struggling, and I could see the performance, the same assessment. In one language, she does better, in another language, she does. And then the school also still in the process of getting used to the school-based assessment. And I know that I can't keep him, I need to make a very difficult decision when he is in year 3, that I have to change the idea of moving him to a national school, because I don't think so he's still ready to pursue that. So I have to move him to Fairview. And that means there's one-way track. I can't go back to a national school because totally the content, the approaches are all different. And the good part is Fairview is even smaller classes. There are like 14 to 15 students in his class in primary. First few years, I was a bit lost because I don't know, it's like a cake, like what Ellen was telling. I don't know what actually he was learning. He was everywhere. He was learning everything, but nothing so concrete. And we also don't understand what is this criterion is all about. We know that there are some criterion, and he also don't know what he's doing. So that time they have this managed back. I was not very happy actually. I thought it's a wrong decision. Then when he went to M1, I could see some stability in him. And in fact, I already could see a big jump in his general personal disposition. I call it personal disposition means how he carry himself, how he get himself open with the environment when he was in M2 and M3, that I could see some drastic change in him. And being a parent, I always have this conversation with him every time he comes back from school. So I always ask him what you learned today, why you learned this for. This is some basic questions that I ask. Whenever I see him struggling with homework, I said no help from parents, minimum assistance. So if the homework you couldn't do, I said something wrong at the school. So, but I could communicate with the school very frequently. Even when he's having some problems. So that's a good part of the approach. So a lot of visitations, a lot of excursion, field trip, a lot of real life experience that I could see him getting into. I believe in that inquiry based. Even though my elder two are in national school, then overseas, and sometimes I ask them to reflect. They say, why are you asking me this question? It's such a lame question. Just get over with it, you know. So I said they're in overseas now. When they were asked to do this reflection, they say, I don't know why they ask all these questions. Just get over with it and just go on with the lesson, you know. But my son, if you ask him to reflect, he will explain long, lengthy reflection. So that is something that I could see a difference between my daughters, who are both in overseas at this moment. They are from the traditional national curriculum. And being independent, even during the good part of what Fairview was the digital maturity. They started in the school very much earlier. When he's in a primary, they introduce iPad, they introduce notebook, they have this managed bag. Now they have this learning management system, Beat, and so on. So the child's digital maturity was just nice for him to have a soft landing when there was a haze in Penang and the school was closed. And also when this pandemic came that he couldn't continue normal face-to-face schooling, I could see that a lot of independence and a lot of, he sits well, you know, he can, what they call a soft landing, you know, I couldn't see much different in him. So a lot of leadership opportunity for him. We could see, especially the celebration of learning. I attended a few, I give my comment, I could see him speak. And that was one incident that when he was talking, then there's another friend who was him talking, and he's the friend, everybody was laughing about what the other boy was doing. And my son was turning towards the wall and he was laughing, but he don't want people to see him laughing. So I asked him when he came back, I asked him, why don't you laugh like others? Just laugh it out. He said, I don't want to embarrass him. So he was looking at the wall and he was laughing. So he said, I don't want to embarrass him by laughing in front of him. So I thought these are some of the values that I really appreciate in a child, where the empathy, you know, that he has towards his fellow colleagues, fellow students, that is something that I really appreciate very much. Next slide, please. Yeah. Then in terms of content knowledge, I've been in a traditional system. I'm a product of that, and my son was also in another private school using national system. I can say some content was very much deep in the national, some are very little in IB. Sometimes IB go a bit deep, and so it's very difficult to compare, you know. But definitely the approaches looks different. The content in terms of the student looks beyond textbooks. There were times they'll be using Singapore textbook. Sometimes they'll be using IGSE textbook. Sometimes there's no textbooks the teachers give. So I could see this is the culture that we need to prepare them for the university, where knowledge is not based on only a particular textbook. They need to be different perspective. That part I like a lot, you see. And the self-reflection, he writes 500 words of self-reflection. I don't know how they train him to write that long. And sometimes my two daughters will say that's crazy. But but he do that. He do this self-reflection. And in particular, I like this beat, the learning management system. It's like one-stop center for him. And he himself feel very comfortable with this beat. This is one of the reasons I think the school did not suffer so much when they move into this, we are in this MCO time, it's very much self-directed. We could communicate, we could see a response was faster, his work can be seen, that kind of a environment is very good. So next slide, please. This IB learner profile. I remember when he was in primary, he said, what are you going to do? I need to do some research. I say, research? What research? So such terms and terminology was a bit different for many primary students. And I could see that he can talk about his profile, learning profile. He talks about these approaches to learning. He talks about how you need to work with his friends, how to work in a group, how to share. And this is really the real life experience. When we work in real life, we need to work in a team. We need to communicate with each other. And sometimes we need to work with people from another country, another counterpart. I think that culture is very necessary for them to prepare to the real life situation. I think that part I do appreciate. And I've never sent my kids overseas alone, but I've sent him a couple of times, and I was worried, but he managed to survive. And he's been to a few countries.
Where did he go, by the way?
He's been to Bali. He's been to Sumatra. He's been to Vietnam. He's been to Singapore. But he's supposed to go to Bali, but he did it virtual Bali trip this time.
Yeah. That was a pandemic one.
Yeah. So I find that I now feel confident that he can take a flight, he can come back, he know how to manage himself. You could come back and write a report and reflect on what's happening. Sometimes he doesn't know why he's going there, but in end of it, I find that exposure is something that we don't get in normal circumstances. Not everybody, not every child gets that equal. I think my daughters were until Form 5, the furthest they've been is to KL on their own with the teachers, you see. So this, is a bit costly, but this is a good exposure. Yeah. Last one, please. Last slide. Next slide. Mindset. I'm so sorry if I'm putting my son's award and whatever he got. It's not to brag about him.
Proud father.
But I find that this was something that I only could see him in M3. I could see him in M3, and he got this Falcon, and he appreciate what the Falcon is all about. Now in his M4, he will tell me, I need to move in my criterion D, I need to move in my criterion B. And ask him what is this criterion B is all about. If I have some personal instructor for him, he could able to explain. I say, I'm not going to explain to your instructor, your personal coach, Sometimes I need for certain subjects. Then I said, you need to explain what is this criterion. But it's a similar bloom, even national school does. But for a child to understand this in a very young age, what actually they're learning, what criterion they're tested, that is something that I find that.
So Dr. Bala, just to clarify, you're talking about the rubrics, aren't you?
Yeah.
So how many children, I just paraphrase it for our other parents out there, how many children would know how to look at a rubric and say, this is what I need to do better? Mm-hmm. And comparing that to a traditional system where you have, did you say this word? Keywords, 1 mark, this word, 1 mark, which I mean, you're an educator. Does that really
but
add value to the conversation?
I see that in my daughters when they are in upper secondary. I mean, where they talk about higher order thinking and they know which kind of questions, how they didn't answer. But he could able to do as early as M1. That is something that I find the criterion based. He might not know what is this Bloom and Anderson, whatever.
It's too early.
But he could speak. Then he will say that I need to work on my criterion. Next exam, they're going to test this criterion again. This one is not tested now. So you say, can you show me some questions for this criterion? Can you see what your teachers comment on it? When a child can take some kind of a charge about what they're learning,
Ownership,
ownership about learning, I think that is the right mindset. I could send him, because I need to send him overseas. That is something that I always told my kids as young. I said, you do your tertiary overseas. I need you to have this global perspective. So that's why I say you can do any system you like, whatever results you like. If you get a scholarship, go ahead. If you don't get this, I will definitely arrange for you to go to somewhere to have a different perspective.
But they need ownership. They need to have control of their lives.
There are some, you know, plus and this one, especially I see I can't compare my son because my daughters are in one in France and one in Germany. And some of the instructors ask, oh, you learned this in Malaysia so early. So they're surprised. But at the same time, I asked my daughter, what do you lose out when you study there? He said, a lot of practical. We miss a lot of practical, a lot of lab. And we find that the students of O level there, they're very much well-versed in hands-on, in minds-on, you know, they could able to have a lot of this practical experience, especially lab. We could see that sometimes in schools, lab takes a back seat, you know, especially even science or whatever. And even in MCO, it takes a toll on the students because they could not do all this. So that was something that I could able to see. Last slide, please, maybe. Preparing for further education. I think this SS prep, this on-screen exam, and the integrity that the IB is trying to cultivate among the child is something that I appreciate a lot, because you can't get all A, but you don't have the integrity and the value. When he do his assessment, I do ask him some questions, what happened, so and so, but he could able to explain, and I think they have a right system to control this. I think that much that I can say about my son. So thank you again for listening to my story. So back to you, Dr. Vincent. Yeah.
Absolutely. So just for those who don't know what assess prep is, that's a word, right? It's basically a software that we use to assess kids online digitally. And it does all sorts of things like proctoring. Proctoring is like, how do we invigilate digitally at home? It's almost a crazy idea, but we've been doing this for a while and we're pretty good at that. I do have one question that's come through here. Let's see. How does the, okay, I'm going to use, you know, do you wish your daughters could reflect as easily as your son? And what kind of challenges do you think they will face if you try and compare the two? Because you've got a really good grounds for comparison. A lot of parents don't have that ground, so it's very hard to see because people are from two different families, maybe one in the IB and one in not. But in your situation, you can actually see the very clear difference between a child that's gone through one system and another. And let's fine tune down to one attribute that you clearly drew on: reflection. This bizarre, silly question that people are asking that your son can do. Is it really important? Does it actually have value?
I think it is a value, especially when they are pursuing their education overseas. I know it's a very unfair for me to compare two different systems because they are like apple and oranges. The contents are different, the curriculum are different, the approaches are different, the way the teachers are trained are different. So, but what I could say that there are some plus points in my daughters, which I don't see in my son yet, but that also I shouldn't compare because each child is an individual. Their learning journey is different, but I could see that some kind of a competitive spirit in my two daughters. They are very competitive, you know, it's like, it's always one, but I could not see that much in my son. But because he takes things, because it's all about him and he assesses himself, and he's not comparing with others, which is in a way is a good, but I'm worried also in a way it also might be a challenge for him because he needs to survive in another country, and then being in Malaysia, having competitive spirit is a must, you know. But one good part I could see that my daughters do not have is he could open up, you know, he could, the personal disposition I can see. I don't know, many parents might have talked about this habits of mind, you know. We always talk about habits of mind.
Yep,
It's about how he opened himself.
Yes.
And I'm very particular about my kids shouldn't complain about school, couldn't complain about kids. And he also never say anything bad about the school. He'll never say anything bad about the child or another class, but he is generally open up. He is open up and he could able to appreciate what he's learning. That part, that personal disposition, the persistence, you know, because he changed from a private school to another school, you know, and it's not a good for, because first few years he said he likes the old school, he misses his friends. But I think that's a decision, a wrong decision, and put him changing schools. But he could able to be persistent. I mean, because I think all size of classrooms, I could see he can open up more. And I wish my daughters, sometimes I ask them some questions in the car. Hey, what you learn today? I learned about 3D. Why you need to learn about 3D? They say, don't ask me this question. You know, why you learn about what you call rainbows? They say, don't ask me about that. But I say, there must be a reason why you're learning it. But if I ask my son, he will try. He will try to answer. Sometimes he doesn't give the right answer because that's what learning all about. You must make a meaning of what you're learning. It's not simply taking in the content, like the whale that you are showing a picture just now. Okay. All right. That's my answer. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Bala. Really appreciate that. Wonderful life experiences there and a lot to take home for all of our parents on the call right now. So we're just going to move forward. We've got a couple of Q&As already coming in. So at this point, everybody, if you have any questions you want to ask about the IB at all, just put it into the question and answer. If you want to specifically target it at one of the speakers so far, just pump it in there and then type the speaker's name, and I'll make sure it gets highlighted with the speaker. But for now, I'm just going to share with you a little bit about who we are. Because we've been talking so long about, you know, the IB and everything, you don't know who we are at all. So we are a top 50 IB global world school. So that means that we are among the top 50 in the world for the IB diploma results in the year 2020. So we totally aced it, and we were the highest in Malaysia. This year we're among the highest, but we're not the highest, unfortunately. We are in the Council of International Schools. We are SKIP 5 stars. SKIPS is the Malaysian government awarding system. We also won the International School Awards, ISC, for our skills development program. I think you may have heard one of the parents speak about the word ATL, that's approaches to teaching and learning. Those are essentially for you and me, it's skill development program. We also featured amongst the 10 best international schools in Malaysia, and we also delivered the Duke of Edinburgh International Award. Well, that's a big mouthful of all of the accolades that we are holding, that some of the accolades that we're holding. Some of the big things that you can remember about this, easy things to remember. 3 reasons why our parents really trust us. You know, we really prepare our kids for careers. And one of the metrics that we measure is, you know, how many of our DP students receive scholarship offers. And currently we're at 60% of our students receive scholarship offers off the bat. Academics, we're one of the top IBDP world schools in Malaysia. Actually, it's not 2 years in a row. It's like 7 years in a row. We've been hitting averages of about 36, 37. So we're not a one-hit wonder. If you go on our website, you can see our track record and how strong it's been over the years. And finally, we communicate a lot with our parents, and we do surveys a lot. And over 90% of our parents feel that communication at Fairview is frequent, delightful, and relevant. So you'll know that when you come to this school, you're not coming to a school where they're just not going to talk to you, not going to listen to you, because we listen and we talk to our parents. This is a little flyer showing you our IB diploma results, and I really want to help you remember us really well. To remember us by 3 things. 1, we use the IB pedagogy. Miss Elaine has spent so much time sharing with you about those unique 2 points, that inquiry and the international mindedness. Great stuff to know over there. We have this amazing program at Fairview called Future Proof at FIS, where we do all sorts of things to make sure that your child is ready to thrive in a future, not another exam, because we don't believe that life stops at another examination. We believe that life is not just a career, life is not a university placement, it's a lot more than that. We have skill development programs, coaching programs, sports programs, exposure programs, camps, all sorts of things, and all this come under the banner called Future Proof at Fairview International School. And finally, we have a very unique everyone's a musician's program. We believe that every child should learn a musical instrument. So every child at Fairview learns one orchestral music instrument, all inside the school. And our children play in ensembles and teams, and in large orchestras a lot of the time, and they perform at international competitions. Okay. If you want to ask, you want to find out any more, I'm going to leave this slide on the screen while I ask the questions that have come out so far. So, Saikat, you have two questions. How does the assessment rubrics used as qualification criteria for universities? Any recommendations on the minimum requirements? So, Elaine, if you don't mind, I'll do this one because I have a rough idea on this one. So you saw all those numbers like level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. So just imagine that in each subject, science, you get a number from 1 to 7. And that's sort of a combination of all of the other criteria. So if you have 4 criteria and each have 4 or 5 points, you add those up and then they come into certain bands where you change it into a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And in each subject, you have 7. So let's say you have 7 subjects, 7, 7, 49, and that will be a total number. And then the university will say, I want a 36 or something along those lines. Okay. For the IB diploma, the total number is 45. That's like the golden number because nobody gets 45. It's so hard to get. And the passing number is 30. So we take 6 subjects in the diploma, the passing number is 30. So you can see it's roughly about 5 is the pass mark over there. And the universities accept it all over the place. Like Manchester University, where I was trained as a doctor, they ask for a 36 in the IB diploma. Oxford will ask you for a 39 in the IB diploma and a certain combination of subjects. If you really want to dig in hard and deep this one, we are going to do an IB diploma sort of workshop at some point. So stay tuned on the channel. Just subscribe to the Facebook page and you'll get alerts about when we run those things as well. How does IB help to choose students for further studies? Elaine, do you know this one or do you want me to do this for you?
You can go ahead.
Yeah.
Chime in.
So development of career, the development of a child's career starts at primary 4 in our children. Like, yes, I said it, primary 4. Most schools start helping children think about their career, their future aspirations in Form 4 or Form 5 for the really bad ones. We start at primary 4. And the program is a very intentional, systematic program focusing on the Japanese concept called ikigai. If any of you read books out there, you'll heard of the word ikigai. It's based on 4 circles: what the world, what you love, what do you do well, what the world needs, and what can you be paid for. And the children build up this picture over several years to make decisions about interest and mission and things that they can and direct themselves in that direction. They make decisions every year, so they're constantly attacking the question and they don't leave it until you're in Form 4 to handle. So that's how Fairview does it. Now the IB doesn't have any specific career guidelines, so what they do in the other IB schools in Malaysia will differ from what we do in Fairview. And Evelyn is asking, what are the paths after you finish the MYP program? So in Malaysia, you can go to any of the tertiary, any of the A-level programs if you really wanted to, but I strongly recommend if you are an MYP student and you've been trained to reflect and think, going into a traditional system where they focus heavily on, knowing the right keywords, and having a very specific way of answering things and only one right answer, that's not going to do well for an IB student, because the IB student would look at that fill in the blank question and say, why isn't the blank any bigger? I need more space here. It's not enough to write. And it doesn't work for their head because they've been trained all their life to look at possibilities and to consider options. Going into a more traditional system like the IGCSE, the A-level systems, they can be quite restrictive for IB students typically. They don't do very well. But once they get to university, because university is very open-ended and universities want you to think, IB students suddenly explode over there because there's no more one right answer that you see in most traditional approaches like the IGCSE, A-levels, and the O-levels. Okay, so those are the paths after the MYP program. So just again, any other questions from the ground? Please type it up into the chat room and we'll pick it up and pass it along.
Yeah. I think we missed the question from AL.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, they were asking about the age group for PYP and MYP overlap.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So the age group is a recommended age group that the IB has given. So in different in different IB schools, they will put the recommended age group. So it does overlap. So in Fairview, our primary years end at primary 5. So the age group, the age that they come in, it could be up to 11 years old or 12 years old. So this is, again, a recommended age group by the IB, but it depends on the school on how they want to structure the age group. So it might overlap. So you might have kids who are 10 or 11 going to MYP and they might graduate at 16. So again, it depends on the school on how they want to structure the age grouping.
Excellent. Okay, it's 6 minutes to 12. So we've got 6 minutes left before this presentation finishes. I've got a couple of questions, but I'll just choose one. Dr. Bala, I have a question from you from a parent. What differences would you believe you would see if you continued sending your son to his previous school?
Okay. I think in terms of preparing him for his tertiary, that I think there will be some lot of difference because his problem was language acquisition. I knew that. I can't speak for all the other parents, but it's only for my son. So I feel that he will struggle when it comes to language acquisition and until he's in secondary. So now when I put him here, that issue is no more an issue. And certain things I was actually not aware, especially the IB system. But when I see him here, I think if I put him into a tertiary education in overseas, even in other private, because he definitely can't go to public universities, but he will go to private universities, I think he could be able to survive better. I have the confidence now with him, just need to work with him a bit more on his self-management part. I think that sense is okay because it's a small school. But that is something that I will know that definitely he will lose out if he is still there. And I'm not speaking this as a marketing exercise for Fairview. I'm speaking this is from my child's need. I can't compare this with another person's child. It's for my son. I think this will be right because I've seen success in my daughters in national system. So I can't say that that's good, this is bad. And I'm a product of a national system. So I can't say anything bad about it. But I could say that for my son's need, definitely this will be a right path because he might lose out a lot of things if I put him in the same approach. He might be still not open up like now. Yeah.
And just another question for Miss Wendy. Miss Wendy, are you still with us there? Yep. You're mute at the moment, Wendy.
Okay. Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
So the question is, do you look at the future and imagine yourself sending your child to tuition classes and the like as well? Still, would they really work in your situation?
I hope not. I hope I don't ever have to go tuition because I've been through. I'm a my mom and dad has always been putting me to extra classes and it was horrendous. I hated it. So I hope I never have to send Caden to extra classes just to learn. But yeah, extra classes to learn more about the topics. But in terms of like piano and whatnot, it's okay. Skills I'm okay, but just not education wise.
No math or science tuition.
No, I hope not. I hope not. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I have one for Miss Elaine. In your opinion, there's Montessori and then there's what are the differences between the more commonly understood Montessori and the IB program?
All right, in the IB program, again, it's a system of best practices, right? We actually it's the underlying philosophy for Montessori Reggio, it's play-based learning. And that is what the IB believes in too. So in our early years, we also go through what we call play-based learning. We take elements of the Montessori, Reggio Emilia, and a variety of other early years learning, and we put it together in our early years program. So I wouldn't say there's much difference, because it's just at the end the approach. And I think something that's unique about this is that we learn through music also for the earliest.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. So thank you very much, all of our parents and all of our speakers, Dr. Bala, Wendy, Elaine. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today on a Saturday morning. I wish everybody the best of future and to be safe in these times. So, you know, if any parent out there wants to contact us, the contact numbers are on screen. Just send us a message. Somebody's going to get right back to you immediately. With that, have a great day, a wonderful afternoon, a wonderful weekend. Be safe and God bless. Bye now.